the night was quiet in Mecca. People had gone to sleep as usual, not knowing that something was about to happen that would change the whole world forever. Suddenly, strange and powerful signs appeared. The huge fire temple of the Persians, which had burned for more than 1,000 years without ever going out, suddenly died and went dark in one moment. At the same time, the mighty palace of the Persian king shook so hard that its 14 tall towers cracked and fell to the ground. And in faraway places, lakes that had existed for centuries dried up in just a blink. The people of the world did not know yet what all these signs meant. But that night, a baby was born, Muhammad, the last prophet of Allah. The house where he was born was filled with light, a light so bright that his mother, Amina, said it reached far into the skies and she could even see the castles of Syria glowing in its shine. Angels surrounded the house, guarding this baby, because he was chosen for the greatest mission, to bring the message of Islam to the world. And yet, while this baby was born into light and miracles, outside his family had no idea how great his purpose would be. For now, he was only a newborn in his mother's arms, while the world trembled with miracles. But what led to this moment? How did we arrive at this miraculous night? And why did Allah send His Prophet into such a broken and dark world? To understand, we must go back to the beginning of the story. Many years earlier, Arabia was a land without a king. Different tribes ruled themselves. They fought each other for honor, wealth, and revenge. People killed each other over small arguments, and wars could last for decades. The strong were cruel to the weak, and women were often treated badly. Some even buried their baby girls alive because they were ashamed of them. The people of Mecca worshipped idols, hundreds of them, which they kept inside the Kaaba, the holy house built long ago by Prophet Ibrahim and his son Prophet Ismail. The Kaaba was supposed to be for Allah alone, but the people had filled it with stone statues. The world was filled with darkness, yet the world was waiting. Waiting for someone who could guide them back to the truth. It was at this time that a man named Abdullah, who belonged to the noble Quraysh tribe, married a kind and gentle woman named Amina. Abdullah was loved for his good manners and honesty. But shortly after their marriage, Abdullah had to travel on a trade journey, and sadly, he passed away before his son was born. Amina was heartbroken, but she found comfort in her unborn child. She had strange dreams during her pregnancy. In one dream, a bright light came out of her and lit up all the lands from Mecca to Syria. She was told in her dream, "You are carrying the master of this nation." These dreams comforted her, even though she was alone, without her husband. The Quraysh people were proud of their lineage. They were descendants of Prophet Ismail, son of Prophet Ibrahim, so they knew they came from a noble family. Amina often thought of her husband Abdullah, and how happy he would have been to meet his son. She whispered prayers for her child, not knowing yet how Allah had chosen him for the greatest purpose. As her time to give birth drew near, Amina felt nervous but also strangely peaceful. It was as if her heart knew that her child would not be like other children. That night, when the baby finally came into the world, she saw things no mother had ever seen before. The baby was born clean, without the mess of birth, and already circumcised. He placed his tiny hands on the ground and lifted his head toward the sky, as if he knew who his creator was. A sweet fragrance filled the room, unlike anything people had smelled before. The air felt calm, and yet, far away, the earth shook and the fire temple collapsed. Outside the house, no one yet knew what was happening. They did not know that the man who would one day teach them to stop worshipping idols, to free slaves, to care for the poor, and to respect women, had just been born. They did not know that this baby, Muhammad, would be the last prophet of Allah, sent as a mercy to all mankind. The lesson we can already learn from this is that even when the world seems dark and full of injustice, Allah never leaves people without hope. He always sends guidance. Just as light filled the house of Amina on that night, light can enter our lives when we hold on to truth, kindness, and faith. But while the night of Muhammad's birth was full of miracles and signs, life around him was not so easy. His father was gone, his mother was alone, and the land of Arabia was still full of cruelty and fighting. He would grow up without parents, without wealth, and without protection. How could such a child survive, let alone become the greatest guide for humanity? As the morning came after his birth, Mecca began to stir awake. No one yet knew of the miracles that had happened in faraway lands, or the fire that had gone out, or the cracks in the Persian palace, But whispers began to spread about the baby who was born with light, who smelled of musk, and who lifted his head toward the sky. The Quraysh people, proud of their tribe, wondered what this meant. Then came a knock on the door of Amina's house. Important men of the Quraysh had gathered outside. They wanted to see the child. They had questions, and perhaps even fears, about what this baby's birth might mean. And when the baby was carried to them, one of the elders gasped loudly and stepped back, his eyes wide with shock. The elder's hands trembled as he pointed at the baby in Amina's arms. His lips moved but no words came out at first. Finally, in a shaky voice, he said, "This child, he will change the fate of the Arabs." The other men exchanged worried glances. Some frowned, some whispered to one another, and a few even looked fearful. They could not understand how a simple baby could carry such power. Yet something about the child's calm face, his shining forehead, and his steady gaze unsettled them. Amina held her son closer, protective and proud. She did not fully understand either, but she knew in her heart that this child was special. The Quraysh men soon left, whispering among themselves. Outside the house, they argued. Some said this child might be a blessing, while others worried he could threaten their wealth and idols. Already, the birth of Muhammad was stirring hearts. For the next few days, Amina felt a peace unlike anything she had known. She often watched her baby sleep, noticing how calm and content he was. Unlike other babies, he barely cried. And when he did, it was as though his tiny whimper carried gentleness instead of anger. His face glowed with light, and she felt comforted every time she looked at him. But in the wider world, people still talked about the strange signs of that night. News spread that the fire temple had gone out and that the Persian king had been shaken in his palace. The Persians wondered what this meant for their empire, which had stood for centuries. The Jews of Medina remembered old prophecies that a new prophet was about to come. Some even began to look toward Mecca, waiting for news. But in Mecca itself, most people carried on with life as normal. Few understood that the center of the world had just shifted. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. As was the tradition among the Quraysh, baby Muhammad was soon given to a wet nurse, a woman from the desert tribes, to raise him in the fresh air of the open land. City children often grew up weak, but the desert air was said to make them strong and healthy. Many women came into Mecca, hoping to find a child to nurse. Among them was a woman named Halima Sa'diya from the Banu Sa'd tribe. Halima and her family were poor. They owned a weak donkey and an old camel that gave no milk. She had come to Mecca with hopes of finding a wealthy child to nurse, one whose family could pay her well. But by the time she arrived, every other woman had already chosen a child, except Muhammad. Because he was an orphan, no one wanted him. They thought, what payment can an orphan's family give us? Halima herself passed him by at first, disappointed that there was no wealthy child left for her. But as she and her husband prepared to leave Mecca, she felt pity. "Let me take this child," she told her husband. "Maybe Allah will bless us through him." Her husband agreed, and they took the baby into their care. Little did they know that their lives were about to change in the most astonishing way. As soon as they placed Muhammad in their arms, Halima felt a strange peace wash over her. Her camel, which had been dry for so long, suddenly gave milk enough for both Muhammad and her own child. Their weak donkey suddenly sped ahead of the others, carrying them home faster than anyone else. The family who had always been last and left behind was now ahead of everyone. Halima and her husband looked at each other in amazement. "This child is full of blessing," they whispered. Back in the desert, their animals grew fat while others' animals remained thin. Their home filled with food while others struggled. People began to notice and wondered why Halima's family had suddenly become so fortunate. Halima loved Muhammad as her own son. She cared for him tenderly and noticed he was unlike any other child. He was gentle, kind, and never caused trouble. Even as a baby, he seemed thoughtful, almost aware of things around him. Years passed, and Muhammad grew into a strong and healthy boy. He played with other children of the tribe but never argued or fought. His foster brothers and sisters loved him dearly. Halima often thought about how her life had changed since the day she took him in. She knew this was no ordinary child. But then, one day, something happened that shook Halima's heart with fear. Muhammad was playing outside with his foster brother when suddenly his brother ran back, pale and frightened. "Mother! Mother," he cried. "Two men in white have taken my brother." Halima and her husband rushed outside, panic rising in their chests. They found young Muhammad sitting on the ground, his face pale but calm. His clothes had been lifted, and he pointed to his chest. "They opened me," he said softly, "and they washed my heart." Halima's husband looked around but saw no men. Muhammad explained that two angels had come, opened his chest, and washed his heart with water from a golden bowl, removing something black from it. The other children who had seen it swore the same. Halima's heart raced with fear and awe. She knew Muhammad was special, but now she realized he was under the care of the unseen world. She and her husband hugged him tightly, tears streaming from their eyes. They did not know what would happen next. Would more of these strange things occur? Was it safe to keep him? Their hearts filled with questions as they stared at the boy who had already changed their lives. And then, in the silence of that night, Halima heard a sound outside her tent. A group of men from the Quraysh had arrived, asking for the boy. They said the elders of Mecca had sent them, for they had heard strange rumors. The night was quiet, but Halima's heart thundered in her chest as the Quraysh men stood outside her tent. Their voices were firm. "We have heard strange things about this boy," one of them said. "The elders of Mecca demand that he be brought back. He does not belong in the desert anymore." Halima's husband stepped forward, shielding the entrance. "He is safe with us," he said carefully. But deep inside, both he and Halima knew the truth. They had seen something no parent had ever seen. Angels had come to their boy. His chest had been opened, his heart washed, and then he had been left unharmed. He was clearly under the protection of Allah. Yet what would the Quraysh elders do if they heard these details? Would they harm the child out of fear? Halima looked at Muhammad, sleeping peacefully on his small bed of blankets, his face glowing with calmness. She felt tears rise in her eyes. She loved him as her own son, but she also knew her duty. This was no ordinary boy. This was a boy with a destiny far beyond her desert home. So the next morning, with a heavy heart, Halima prepared to return Muhammad to his mother in Mecca. The journey back felt long and painful. Every step her donkey took, she thought of the blessings she had enjoyed since Muhammad had entered her life, the milk, the food, the strength, the laughter in her home. She whispered prayers for him, not knowing when or if she would ever see him again. When Amina saw Halima arrive, she welcomed her with open arms. She held her son tightly, overjoyed to see him. "Why bring him back so soon?" she asked. "He is still young." Halima hesitated. How could she explain what had happened? If she spoke of angels, would Amina believe her? Finally, she said softly, "He is safe with you." Strange things happen around him. He is not like other boys. Amina's eyes softened. She smiled, though a shadow of worry crossed her face. "Yes," she said, "I have always known this. Before he was born, I was told he would be the master of this nation." She kissed Muhammad's head. "Allah will protect him." Muhammad grew quickly. Though still a child, people noticed his good manners. He spoke gently, treated others kindly, and never lied. Even the elders of Quraysh would sometimes say, "This boy is unlike any other." He played with children his age, but he was never rude or harsh. He respected everyone, whether rich or poor. Amina's heart swelled with pride every time she watched him. But Amina's joy was mixed with sadness. She often thought of Abdullah, her late husband, and how he never got to see his son. Muhammad grew up without knowing his father, and soon, fate would take more from him. When Muhammad was about 6 years old, Amina decided to take him on a journey. She wanted him to see Yathrib, later called Medina, where his father's grave was. She also wanted him to meet his relatives from her side. Together, she, Muhammad, and a servant named Umayman set off on the journey north. The trip was long, but Muhammad enjoyed seeing new places. He met family members who welcomed him warmly. He saw the resting place of his father, and though he was still young, his heart felt heavy with sadness. He had never known Abdullah, but he stood quietly by the grave, his little hands folded, as if he understood. After some days, Amina began the journey back to Mecca. But along the way, she fell very ill. Her face grew pale, her body weak. Little Muhammad stayed by her side, holding her hand with his tiny fingers. He did not cry loudly, but his eyes filled with tears. He whispered, "Mother," over and over, as though his voice could keep her alive. But Amina could not go on. In the small village of Abwa, she breathed her last breath, leaving her son behind. Muhammad, only 6 years old, was now an orphan. He had lost his father before birth, and now his mother lay in the grave before him. His heart ached with pain, but Allah was preparing him. Every loss was shaping him for the great mission to come. Ayman took the boy's hand and comforted him as best as she could. Together, they returned to Mecca. The news spread quickly. Muhammad, the boy with the shining face and the gentle manners, was now alone in the world. But he was not truly alone. His grandfather, Abdul Muttalib, the leader of Quraysh, took him in. Abdul Muttalib was an old man, but he loved Muhammad deeply. He made sure the boy was treated with honor. Even though he had many grandchildren, he would seat Muhammad beside him, give him the best food, and cover him with his cloak. People asked, "Why do you favor him so much?" Abdul Muttalib would reply, "This child will be someone great." Muhammad grew under his grandfather's care, but sadness never fully left his heart. Sometimes, he would sit quietly, watching the Kaaba and the idols around it. Something inside him told him this was not right. Why would people worship stone when Allah had created the heavens and the earth? These thoughts stirred in his young heart, though he was still only a boy. But just as he began to find comfort with his grandfather, tragedy struck again. When Muhammad was only 8 years old, Abdul Muttalib, the man who loved him dearly, grew sick and died. Once again, Muhammad stood by the grave of someone he loved, his small frame trembling, his heart aching. And as he left the funeral that day, people whispered among themselves. "How much sorrow can one boy carry?" they said. "How will he survive without a father, a mother, or a grandfather?" No one knew that Allah himself was watching over the boy, shaping him for a future greater than anyone could imagine. But for now, Muhammad walked quietly, his little hands clutched in those of his uncle Abu Talib, who would take him in next. He did not yet know what trials and miracles awaited him. He only knew that once again, his life had changed forever. And as Abu Talib guided him home, a stranger stepped out from the shadows of the street, staring at Muhammad with eyes full of strange curiosity. The stranger's eyes locked on young Muhammad, and his gaze was so intense that Abu Talib instinctively pulled his nephew closer. The man stepped forward, his voice trembling as if he could barely contain himself. "Who is this boy?" he asked. Abu Talib frowned, suspicious. "He is my nephew." "Why do you ask?" The man's eyes widened. He lowered his voice and whispered, "There is a mark between his shoulders. A mark of prophecy." Abu Talib stiffened, suddenly uneasy. "How do you know of this?" The stranger did not answer. Instead, he shook his head, almost as if he regretted speaking. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away into the crowd, leaving Abu Talib unsettled and Muhammad unaware of the full weight of the words. The boy was still young, innocent, and far from realizing his true destiny. But the world was already watching. Abu Talib, though curious, kept the matter to himself. He loved Muhammad like his own son and vowed to protect him. Years passed, and Muhammad grew into a strong, trustworthy, and gentle young man. Though he had lost his parents and grandfather, he found comfort in his uncle's care and in the love of his cousins. Unlike the other children, Muhammad never joined in their mischievous games. He avoided lying, swearing, or treating others harshly. Instead, he became known for his honesty and kindness. People began to call him Al-Amin, which means the trustworthy. If someone lost something, they trusted Muhammad to return it. If there was a dispute, they asked him to judge fairly, even though he was still young. One day, when Muhammad was a teenager, Abu Talib decided to take him on a caravan trade journey to Syria. The desert was harsh, with endless sand and burning heat, but Muhammad bore it with patience. He helped his uncle care for the animals, shared his food, and treated everyone with respect. His good manners made people admire him wherever he went. As the caravan reached the land near Syria, they passed by a small monastery where a Christian monk named Bahira lived. Bahira had studied the old scriptures and spent his life searching for the signs of the final prophet. He rarely paid attention to caravans, but this time was different. When the Quraysh caravan passed by, Bahira came out and invited all of them to share a meal with him. The men were surprised, he had never done this before. They all gathered, but Bahira's eyes searched among them until they landed on the young boy, Muhammad. Bahira studied him closely. He noticed how a small cloud seemed to follow Muhammad, shading him from the burning sun. He noticed how the boy's manners were pure and noble. And when Bahira looked closer, he saw between Muhammad's shoulders a small mark, exactly as described in the old scriptures, the seal of prophethood. His heart raced. Could this be the boy foretold for centuries? During the meal, Bahira asked Muhammad questions about his life, his family, and his habits. Every answer confirmed what Bahira feared and hoped this was indeed the chosen one. After the meal, Bahira pulled Abu Talib aside, his face pale. "This boy," he whispered urgently, "he is no ordinary child. He is the one foretold in the scriptures. Protect him from the Jews and the Romans. If they learn of him, they may harm him. Take him back to Mecca quickly, and never leave him unguarded." Abu Talib felt a chill run down his spine. He tightened his hold on Muhammad's hand. "I will protect him with my life," he promised. The caravan quickly finished its business, and Abu Talib hurried back with his nephew, heart heavy with the monk's warning. From then on, Abu Talib watched Muhammad more closely. He shielded him from harm and refused to let him travel far alone. Yet despite all the protection, Muhammad grew humble, hardworking, and honest. He never acted spoiled or proud. He helped with chores, looked after the sheep, and cared for others. People admired his character more and more. But while Muhammad was safe under his uncle's care, Mecca itself was a place full of corruption. The Quraysh grew rich from trade and from the pilgrims who came to the Kaaba, but they worshipped idols instead of Allah. They cheated the poor, drank heavily, and fought bloody wars. Injustice filled the land. Muhammad often felt sadness in his heart when he saw the cruelty around him. Even though he was still young, he avoided these sins, as though his soul already knew he was meant for something greater. Yet Allah was preparing him step by step. Every hardship, the loss of his parents, the life of poverty, the journeys through the desert, was building strength in his heart. The boy who had been orphaned, who had survived grief after grief, was being shaped into a man who would one day carry the weight of the final message. Still, he was only a young man. And life, with all its trials, had more to test him with. One evening, as he walked home after helping his uncle, Muhammad passed through a narrow street in Mecca. The shadows grew long, and the city's noise faded. Suddenly, he felt someone watching him. From the corner of his eye, he saw a figure step forward from the darkness, cloaked, tall, and with eyes that gleamed strangely in the fading light. The figure spoke softly, almost like a hiss, "You are the one they speak of. The chosen boy. The boy of prophecy." Muhammad froze. His heart beat fast. Who was this stranger? And how did he know? The cloaked figure's voice slithered through the air. "You are the one," he repeated, stepping closer. Muhammad felt a strange chill run down his spine. He was still young, yet his heart sensed danger. The man's words were heavy, like they carried secrets no boy should hear. "Who are you?" Muhammad asked, his voice steady though his hands clenched tightly. The figure gave a low laugh. "That is not important. What matters is you, boy. The world watches you, though you do not know it yet. Powers greater than your tribe speak of you. Some wait for your rise, others plot your fall." Muhammad's chest tightened. He had never spoken to someone like this. His instinct told him not to trust the man. But before he could move, footsteps echoed down the street. Abu Talib's voice called, "Muhammad. Where are you?" The stranger's eyes narrowed. He leaned in and whispered quickly, "Remember my words, child of Quraysh. Destiny hunts you." Then he slipped back into the shadows and was gone. Abu Talib arrived, breathless. He put a protective arm around Muhammad. What happened? Who were you speaking to? Muhammad shook his head. I don't know, uncle. Just a man, but his words were strange. Abu Talib's jaw tightened. He looked around the dark street, suspicion in his eyes. Stay close to me. Do not wander alone. They walked home in silence, but Abu Talib's heart was troubled. He remembered Bahira's warning years ago. Was the stranger one of those who would harm Muhammad? He vowed to keep his nephew even closer than before. Life in Mecca carried on, but Muhammad never forgot that night. He learned to watch people's eyes carefully, to read their hearts, and to guard his trust. While other young men wasted time in drinking or wild parties, Muhammad stayed away. It wasn't that he was forced, his heart simply disliked it. He preferred honesty, hard work, and helping others. His character set him apart. Years passed, and Muhammad grew into a young man. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a shining face that people noticed from afar. But more than his looks, it was his honesty that made him admired. He never lied, never cheated, and always kept his word. The people of Mecca began to call him Al-Amin, the trustworthy. Because of this, merchants trusted him with their wealth. If two men argued over a deal, they often went to Muhammad to settle it. His fair decisions always left people satisfied. Slowly, his reputation grew beyond his family and tribe. But Muhammad's life was still simple. He cared for sheep as a shepherd, earning his living humbly. Many prophets before him had been shepherds, learning patience, responsibility, and the care of the weak. Muhammad learned to guide the sheep with gentleness, to protect them from wolves, and to bring them safely home. This was training for the day he would guide people, not sheep. Though he was poor, Muhammad was never greedy. He shared what little he had and treated the poor with respect. People began to say, "There is no one like Muhammad. He is pure, even among the Quraysh." But Mecca was still a city full of idols. Hundreds of statues filled the Kaaba, and people worshipped them day and night. Muhammad, even as a young man, could not bring himself to bow before a stone. He believed deep in his heart that only Allah, the creator of the heavens and earth, deserved worship. Yet he kept these feelings to himself, waiting silently for a day he did not yet know was coming. Then one day, when Muhammad was about 25, something happened that would change his life again. A wealthy woman of Quraysh named Khadija needed someone to manage her trade caravans. She was respected, wise, and successful, but she needed a man she could trust to lead her goods to Syria. Everyone suggested Muhammad. He is Al-Amin, they said. He will never cheat you. Khadija agreed. She hired him and sent her servant, Maysara, to travel with him. Together, they set off on the long caravan journey. The journey was difficult, burning heat by day, freezing cold by night, but Muhammad worked tirelessly. He traded honestly, never cheating anyone. Every deal he made brought profit, but also respect. Maysara watched him closely and saw things that amazed him. On the road, Muhammad rested under a tree. A Christian monk nearby noticed and asked Maysara, "Who is this man resting beneath that tree?" "He is from Quraysh," Maysara replied. The monk's face changed. "No one but a prophet rests beneath this tree." Maysara was stunned. Later, he also noticed how clouds seemed to shade Muhammad during the hottest part of the journey. He realized this man was no ordinary merchant. When they returned to Mecca, Khadija was astonished. Muhammad had brought back more profit than she had ever earned before, but Maysara's stories amazed her even more. She began to admire Muhammad's honesty, kindness, and character. Soon, she would make a decision that would forever change his life. But before that could happen, another storm was brewing in Mecca. The Quraysh tribes were quarreling again, this time over the rebuilding of the Kaaba. The sacred house had been damaged by floods, and the clans fought over who would place the black stone back in its corner. The argument grew so heated that swords were nearly drawn. Bloodshed seemed certain. And in the midst of the chaos, someone shouted, "Let us ask Muhammad Al-Amin to decide." All eyes turned toward him as he stepped forward into the crowd, every clan watching, every sword ready to strike. The courtyard of the Kaaba was filled with shouting. Men from different Quraysh clans stood face to face, hands gripping their swords, veins bulging with anger. The argument had gone on for days. Who would have the honor of lifting the black stone and placing it back into its sacred corner? Each clan claimed the right, each refused to back down. Bloodshed was only a heartbeat away. Then a voice cut through the noise. "Let us ask Muhammad, Al-Amin, to decide." The crowd grew suddenly silent. Heads turned toward the young man approaching, his calm presence bringing an unexpected stillness. Muhammad walked with steady steps, his face composed, his eyes thoughtful. Everyone respected him. Everyone trusted him. But could one man solve such a deadly dispute? The leaders of Quraysh explained the problem, their voices tense. Muhammad listened quietly, nodding. Then he said, "Bring me a large cloth." Puzzled, they obeyed. Muhammad spread the cloth on the ground and placed the black stone in the middle. Then he said, "Let each clan choose a leader to hold one corner of the cloth. Together, you will lift it." The men exchanged glances. Slowly, they began to smile. This way, every tribe would share in the honor. They grasped the corners and lifted the black stone high. When they reached the Kaaba, Muhammad himself took the stone with his hands and gently placed it into its rightful place. A sigh of relief spread through the crowd. The tension melted away. The swords were lowered. And for the first time in days, the clans agreed on something. They praised Muhammad, Al-Amin, for his wisdom. "He has saved us from bloodshed," they said. "This young man is truly blessed." From that day, Muhammad's respect among the Quraysh grew even greater. People admired not only his honesty but also his fairness and wisdom. He had shown that true leadership was not about pride or force, but about justice and peace. Life seemed calm again in Mecca. Muhammad continued to work, to help the poor, and to live humbly. But Khadija, the wealthy merchant woman, could not forget him. She had watched him carefully after their trade journey, had heard Maysarata's stories, and had seen his fairness with her own eyes. She realized that this man was unlike any other in Mecca. Soon, Khadija sent a message through a trusted friend. She wished to marry Muhammad. Muhammad was surprised. Khadija was respected, wealthy, and many men had sought her hand, yet she had chosen him, a man without wealth or high status. But Muhammad saw her sincerity, her noble character, and her kindness. He agreed. Their marriage was filled with love, respect, and peace. Khadija became not only his wife but also his strongest supporter. Together, they built a family. Their home was filled with warmth, laughter, and kindness. Muhammad loved Khadija dearly, and she loved him with all her heart. She gave him comfort from the wounds of his past, the loneliness of being an orphan, the sadness of loss, and the trials of poverty. In her presence, he found peace. Yet even in the comfort of his home, Muhammad's heart was restless. He often walked through the streets of Mecca, seeing the idols, the drunkenness, and the cruelty to the poor. His soul longed for something greater. Sometimes he would leave the city, climbing up to the mountains to be alone. There, he would sit quietly, gazing at the stars, thinking about the Creator of the heavens and the earth. The more he saw of Mecca's corruption, the more he sought solitude. He wanted truth. He wanted guidance. He wanted to understand the purpose of life. It was during this time that he began to spend long periods in a cave on Mount Hira. The cave was quiet, hidden high above the city, a place of peace. Muhammad would sit there alone, bringing food and water, and spend his time in deep thought. He prayed in the way of his great ancestor Ibrahim, worshipping Allah alone. Khadija supported him. She never complained, even when he stayed away for days. She understood his heart and sent food for him when he needed it. Her love and loyalty gave him strength. But Muhammad did not know that soon, his life and the life of the entire world was about to change forever. Something was coming, something beyond his imagination. The years of solitude, the prayers in the cave, the strange events of his childhood, all of it had been preparing him for this moment. And one night, as he sat alone in the dark cave of Hira, the silence was suddenly broken by a powerful presence. The cave trembled. A light brighter than any torch filled the space. And a mighty voice called out, "Read!" The cave shook with a power Muhammad had never felt before. The darkness of the night was suddenly filled with a presence so overwhelming that his heart raced and his breath grew heavy. A mighty figure stood before him, an angel, vast and glorious, unlike anything human eyes had seen. "Read," the voice thundered. Muhammad's chest tightened. He trembled. "I cannot read," he whispered, his voice breaking. The angel moved closer, wrapping him in a powerful embrace that felt like it would crush him. Then the voice came again, stronger, more commanding. "Read." Muhammad shook his head desperately. "I cannot read." The angel embraced him a second time, tighter than before. Muhammad gasped for air, his heart pounding. Again, the voice commanded, "Read." A third time, the angel pressed him, and then released him. This time the words flowed, not from his own mind but from something greater, as the angel declared, "Read in the name of your Lord who created man from a clot of blood. Read. And your Lord is the most generous. The one who taught by the pen. Taught man what he did not know." The words echoed in the cave, filling the air with divine power. Muhammad's heart shook. His mind raced. These words were not his own, yet they had burned themselves into his memory as though they had always been there. Then, as suddenly as he had appeared, the angel was gone. The cave was silent again. Muhammad fell to the ground, trembling, his body shaking with fear. His heart pounded so hard he thought it would burst. Sweat poured down his face. What had just happened? Was he losing his mind? Or had he truly been chosen by Allah for something unimaginable? He stumbled out of the cave into the cold night. The stars above seemed to swirl. His legs were weak, his chest heavy. He hurried down the mountain, stumbling on the rocks, nearly falling, his mind spinning with fear. By the time he reached his home, he was trembling so badly that his whole body shivered. "Cover me! Cover me!" he cried as he entered. Khadija rushed to him, wrapping him in blankets. She held him tightly, her heart aching at the sight of her husband shaking like a leaf. "What happened? What is it, my love?" she whispered. Muhammad's voice trembled. "I feared for myself. I do not know what has happened to me." He told her everything, the light in the cave, the angel, the command to read, the words that had poured from his lips. His eyes were filled with fear. "Am I mad? Has something possessed me?" he asked. But Khadija's heart was steady. She looked at him with love and certainty. "No," she said firmly. "By Allah, you are not mad. Allah would never disgrace you. You are kind to your family, generous to the poor, you honor your guests, and you support the weak. Allah would never abandon a man like you." Her words soothed him, like cool water on fire. But Khadija did not stop there. She took his hand and said, "Come with me. We will go to my cousin, Waraka ibn Nawfal. He is a wise man who knows the scriptures of the Jews and Christians. He will know what this means." Together, they went to see the elderly Waraka. His eyes were weak with age, but his mind was sharp. When Khadija explained what had happened, Waraka leaned forward, his face serious. "Describe to me what you saw," he said. Muhammad told him about the angel, the embrace, the command to read, and the words he had been given. Waraka's eyes filled with tears. "By the one who holds my soul," he whispered, "this is the same angel that came to Moses. You have been chosen as the prophet of this nation." Muhammad's heart raced. The same angel who came to Moses? Could it be true? But Waraka's face grew heavy. "Would that I were young again," he said sadly. "For the day will come when your people will drive you out." Muhammad's eyes widened. "Will they drive me out? My own people?" "Yes," Waraka replied firmly. "Never has a man brought what you will bring without being opposed. But if I live to see that day, I will stand beside you." These words shook Muhammad deeply. His people would oppose him? The Quraysh, who called him Alamin, who trusted him with their wealth and disputes, would they really turn against him? The thought weighed on him, but for the moment, Khadija's support gave him strength. He returned home, still trembling, but no longer alone. He now knew he was chosen. The message had begun. But the days ahead were not calm. More revelations would come, sometimes shaking him to his core, sometimes leaving him sweating in the cold, sometimes ringing in his ears like thunder. Each time, Khadija was there to comfort him, to remind him of his strength. And then, after some time of silence, when Muhammad feared the angel might never return, it happened again. He looked up one day and saw the angel filling the entire horizon, wings stretching across the sky, blocking out everything else. "O Muhammad! You are the messenger of Allah," the angel declared. Muhammad froze. His heart thundered. The angel's presence was so massive, so overwhelming, that he fell to the ground, covering his face in awe and terror. And the voice came again, echoing across the skies. "Arise, and warn." The command echoed in Muhammad's mind like thunder rolling through the mountains. Arise, and warn. There was no longer any doubt. He was the messenger of Allah, chosen to guide his people. Yet the task before him was heavy. He knew the Quraysh clung to their idols with stubborn pride. He knew they would resist change. But the words of Allah filled his heart with courage. The first to believe was none other than Khadija. Without hesitation, she declared, "I believe that you are the messenger of Allah, and I believe in what has been revealed to you." Her faith was like a lamp in the darkness, giving Muhammad strength when fear threatened to overwhelm him. Soon after, his young cousin Ali, still a boy in his care, accepted the truth. Then came his freed servant Zayd ibn Haritha, who loved Muhammad like a father. And his closest friend, Abu Bakr, whose loyalty would never waver. One by one, quietly, secretly, they joined him in prayer. In hidden places, they bowed their heads only to Allah, whispering verses that few in Mecca had yet heard. These were the first Muslims, the pioneers of a new way of life. But secrecy was necessary. The Quraysh were powerful, and Muhammad knew they would not easily accept the message of Tawhid, worshipping Allah alone. For years, their wealth and pride had come from the idols surrounding the Kaaba. To challenge those idols was to challenge their very power. Still, the message spread slowly. Abu Bakr, with his gentle words and respected reputation, invited others. Among those who joined were Uthman ibn Affan, Talha ibn Ubaidullah, Zubair ibn al-Awwam, and Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas. Each time someone embraced Islam, Muhammad's heart filled with gratitude. Yet it was not easy. The Muslims prayed in secret, hiding from the eyes of the Quraysh. They endured whispers, suspicion, and fear. Sometimes they gathered in the house of Al-Arqam, a safe place where Muhammad taught them the Quran and strengthened their faith. It was here that hearts began to glow with courage, and souls learned patience. The revelations continued, each one strengthening the believers. Verses spoke of Allah's mercy, His power, His creation of the heavens and the earth. They reminded the Muslims of the day of judgment, of paradise for the righteous, and of punishment for those who reject the truth. But the peace of secrecy could not last. One day, Muhammad was commanded to rise before his family and warn them openly. He climbed a hill near the Kaaba, where the Quraysh often gathered when someone had urgent news. He called out to them loudly, "O people of Quraysh! If I were to tell you that an army was coming from behind this mountain, would you believe me?" They replied, "Yes, we have never known you to lie." Then Muhammad said with steady voice, "Then know that I am a warner to you before a severe punishment. Worship Allah alone, and abandon these idols." The crowd murmured in shock. Some faces turned pale, others twisted in anger. His uncle Abu Lahab sneered with fury. "May you be ruined, Muhammad! Did you call us here for this?" His words stung, and from that day, Abu Lahab became one of Muhammad's fiercest enemies. He mocked him, insulted him, and turned others against him. The Quraysh's hostility grew. They whispered among themselves, "This man threatens our way of life. If he succeeds, our idols will be forgotten, our wealth will vanish, and our honor will crumble." Soon, insults turned into open attacks. Some believers were mocked in the streets. Others were beaten. The rich and powerful of Quraysh used their strength to crush the weak. Yet the Muslims, though few in number, held firmly to their faith. Muhammad watched with sorrow as his followers suffered. He prayed for them, taught them patience, and reminded them of paradise. His mission had only just begun, yet already the weight of leadership pressed heavily on his shoulders. And then came the day when one of the most respected men in Mecca, Abu Jahl, confronted Muhammad near the Kaaba. His eyes burned with rage, his voice roared with hatred. "Do you dare insult our gods in front of us? Do you think you can change the religion of our fathers?" Abu Jahl stepped closer, his hand clenched into a fist, his body trembling with fury. The crowd around them grew tense. Everyone watched. Would he strike the messenger of Allah? The air grew heavy. Muhammad stood calmly, his eyes unwavering, his heart firm in Allah. Abu Jahl raised his hand. And at that very moment, something happened that froze the entire crowd in shock. Abu Jahl's hand hovered in the air, his face twisted with rage. The crowd held its breath, waiting for the blow to fall on Muhammad's face. But then, Abu Jahl's expression suddenly changed. His eyes widened. His mouth trembled. His raised hand froze in the air, as though something invisible held it back. He stumbled backward, his face pale with fear. What is this before me?" he stammered. The people stared, confused. They saw nothing. But Abu Jahl's eyes darted wildly, as though he were looking at a terrible sight no one else could see. His voice shook. "Between me and him, I see a trench filled with fire, and terrible wings, and claws ready to strike me." The crowd gasped. Murmurs spread like fire. Abu Jahl, the fierce leader, the arrogant enemy of Muhammad, was trembling like a child. Unable to bear the sight, he turned and fled, his pride shattered before everyone. Muhammad stood calmly, unshaken. He knew what Abu Jahl had seen. The protection of Allah, guarding his messenger. No hand could harm him unless Allah allowed it. But this miracle did not soften the Quraysh. Instead, their anger grew. If they could not strike Muhammad directly, they would crush his followers. The persecution became severe. Bilal, the Ethiopian slave who had embraced Islam, was dragged into the scorching desert at midday. His master placed a huge stone on his chest and mocked him, demanding he return to idol worship. But Bilal, gasping for breath, whispered only one word again and again, "Ahad, Ahad, one, one." His faith was unbreakable. Others suffered too. Yasser and his wife Sumaya, an elderly couple, were beaten and tortured. Their cries echoed in the streets of Mecca. Muhammad walked by them once, his heart heavy with sorrow, and he told them with tears in his eyes, "Be patient, O family of Yasser, for your place is in paradise." Not long after, Sumaya became the first martyr in Islam, killed by Abu Jahl himself. These days were full of pain, but also of hope. Despite the cruelty, more people embraced Islam, drawn by Muhammad's message of truth and justice. Umar ibn al-Khattab, one of the fiercest enemies of Islam, once set out with his sword to kill Muhammad. But instead, after hearing the Quran, his heart melted. He wept, and he became one of the strongest supporters of Islam. His conversion shook Mecca. The Muslims grew bolder. For the first time, they gathered openly at the Kaaba to pray, their voices rising together, proclaiming the oneness of Allah. The Quraysh watched with fury, their pride burning like fire. They knew they had to act. They met in secret councils, plotting. "We cannot let this message spread," they said. "It threatens everything we stand for. If we allow Muhammad to continue, our idols will be forgotten, and our people will rebel." So they decided on a plan: they would boycott Muhammad and all his followers. No one would trade with them. No one would marry them. No one would show them kindness. They would be cut off from society, left to starve in the valley of Abu Talib. When the order was declared, the Muslims were driven out. Families were forced to live in the dry valley, with no food, no water, no shelter from the scorching sun. Children cried from hunger, their voices weak. Men and women survived on leaves and scraps. Their bodies grew thin, their faces pale. Muhammad watched his people suffer, his heart breaking. Yet he stood firm, comforting them, reminding them of Allah's promise. This is a trial, he said. But after hardship comes ease. For 3 long years, the Muslims endured this cruelty. Their faith was tested like never before. Yet they did not abandon Islam. Their patience was stronger than the chains of the Quraysh. And then, one night, when the people of Mecca thought their boycott would crush Muhammad once and for all, something extraordinary happened. A secret message reached Muhammad from within the city. The scroll on which the Quraysh had written the pact of boycott had been destroyed. Every word of oppression, every cruel condition written on it eaten away by tiny creatures, leaving only the name of Allah untouched. Muhammad's eyes widened. This was a sign, a miracle in the face of tyranny. The news of the destroyed scroll spread quickly through Mecca. The Quraysh were stunned. They had placed their pact inside the Kaaba, sealed and guarded, confident in its power. Now, it was ruined, eaten by tiny creatures until only the name of Allah remained. Whispers filled the city. Was this not a sign? Was Muhammad truly protected by Allah? Under the pressure of shame, the Quraysh ended the boycott. The Muslims emerged from the valley of Abu Talib, weak, thin, and exhausted, but their faith unbroken. They had survived the hardest years together, and the bond among them was stronger than ever. But relief did not last. Soon after, Muhammad faced some of the deepest sorrows of his life. His beloved uncle, Abu Talib, the man who had protected him since childhood, fell ill and died. Muhammad wept at his bedside, knowing that without Abu Talib's protection, the Quraysh would become bolder in their attacks. Not long after, Khadija, his loyal wife, his companion, and the first to believe in him, also passed away. Her death struck Muhammad's heart like a heavy blow. For more than 20 years, she had been his comfort, his supporter, his safe place. Now the house felt unbearably empty. That year became known as the Year of Sorrow. Muhammad's heart was heavy with grief. Yet his mission could not stop. He turned to the city of Taif, hoping its people might listen. But instead of kindness, they mocked him, sent their children to throw stones at him, and drove him out until his feet bled. In pain, he lifted his hands to the sky and prayed, "O Allah, to you I complain of my weakness, my lack of strength, and the humiliation I suffer. If you are not angry with me, then I do not care. Your mercy is all that I seek." Even in despair, he placed his trust in Allah. And then, after these darkest days, came one of the greatest miracles of all. One night, as Muhammad lay resting near the Kaaba, he was awakened by the angel Jibril. A white animal, smaller than a horse but larger than a donkey, with wings at its sides, was brought to him. It was called Al-Burak. Jibril said, "Mount it." In an instant, Muhammad was carried across the earth, faster than lightning, until he reached Jerusalem. There, in Masjid al-Aqsa, he led the prophets of old in prayer, Moses, Abraham, Jesus, and many others standing behind him, affirming him as the final messenger. But the journey did not end there. From Jerusalem, Muhammad was taken up through the heavens themselves. He met the prophets in the different levels of heaven, greeted by Adam, Idris, Joseph, Moses, Jesus, and others. Each welcomed him warmly, recognizing his place as the last and greatest of the prophets. Finally, he was brought to a place beyond where even Jibril could go, close to the presence of Allah. There, Allah gave him the command that would become the heart of every Muslim's daily life, the 5 daily prayers. At first, it was 50 prayers a day. But on his return, Moses urged Muhammad to ask Allah for a reduction, knowing his people would struggle. Again and again, Muhammad returned to Allah, and each time the number was lowered until it became 5, yet the reward remained as if 50. A mercy, a blessing, a gift for his people. When Muhammad returned to Mecca, he told the believers of this miraculous journey, the Isra and Miraj. Some mocked him, laughing at the impossible tale. But the believers accepted it without hesitation. Abu Bakr, especially, said with firm faith, "If Muhammad said it, then it is true." From that day, he was known as Siddiq, the truthful. The miracle of the night journey brought hope after sorrow, light after darkness. It reminded Muhammad and his followers that even in their deepest struggles, Allah was with them, guiding them, strengthening them, preparing them for what was to come. Because soon, their mission in Mecca would reach its breaking point. But Quraysh's hostility would grow beyond control, and the believers would be forced to leave their beloved city. A new chapter awaited them, one of migration, struggle, and victory. But as Muhammad stood in the stillness of the night, gazing at the stars over Mecca, his heart was filled with certainty. The journey had only just begun, and the purpose of his life, the purpose of Islam, was clear: to bring the light of Tawhid to the world, to guide humanity from darkness to light, and to teach them to worship Allah alone. The boy who had once been born an orphan, the man who had once trembled in the cave, was now standing as the messenger of Allah, carrying a message that would never die.
Lessons from the story. Allah protects His chosen ones. From the miracles at His birth to the angel shielding Him from Abu Jahl, we see that Allah's plan is always stronger than human plots. Even when the Prophet was weak or in danger, Allah never left him. Patience brings victory. The Muslims suffered hunger in the valley, beatings in the streets, and cruel insults. But they never gave up their faith. Their patience became the key to their strength, and eventually Allah gave them ease after hardship. True honor is in character, not wealth. Muhammad was not the richest or most powerful man in Mecca, yet he was called Al-Amin, the trustworthy. His honesty, kindness, and fairness made people respect him more than gold or idols ever could. Support from loved ones matters. Khadija's love and faith gave the Prophet strength when he feared he might be losing his mind. Abu Talib's protection kept him safe when the Quraysh plotted against him. This shows us the importance of supporting family and friends when they are struggling. Faith is stronger than oppression. Bilal, Yasir, Sumaya, and many others endured torture but never abandoned the truth. Their courage shows that no amount of pain or pressure can break the heart of a true believer. Loss is a test, not the end. The Prophet lost his parents, his grandfather, his uncle, and his beloved Khadija. These sorrows were heavy, but he never gave up. Instead, he turned to Allah, showing us that faith can carry us through grief. Miracles remind us of Allah's power. The Isra and Miraj, night journey, came at a time of deep sadness, reminding the Prophet and us that after darkness, Allah can bring the brightest light. No matter how hopeless life seems, Allah can open doors we never imagined. Standing for truth means facing opposition. Every prophet was opposed by their people. Muhammad was mocked and attacked, but he continued his mission with courage. This teaches us that if we stand for what is right, not everyone will support us, but Allah always will. Unity is strength. The early Muslims, though small in number, stood together in prayer, in suffering, and in hope. Their unity gave them power greater than their enemies' swords. This teaches us to stay united with those who share the truth. Prayer is the gift of Allah. Out of all the miracles, the night journey gave Muslims their daily prayers. This shows how important prayer is. It connects us directly to Allah, strengthens our hearts, and keeps us on the straight path. The biggest lesson of all: Islam is about light, truth, and peace. The Prophet's life shows that even through hardship, faith in Allah brings strength, courage, and victory. Please do well to subscribe to Quran Stories. Bye.